The crowd froze. A woman standing on the marble steps of one of the richest mansions in the city grabbed a bucket filled with filthy mop water and dumped every drop onto a chauffeur standing beside a black luxury car. Nobody moved. Not the security guards. Not the guests. Not even the man she had humiliated. But what nobody understood was this. Why did the chauffeur smile instead of getting angry? Why did the mansion owner suddenly turn pale the moment he saw him? And why, just minutes later, did several black SUVs race toward the estate? What happened next changed every life standing in that driveway forever. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know where you're watching from. Now, let's get started. At first glance, Ethan Brooks looked like any ordinary chauffeur. 38 years old. Always wearing a clean black suit. Perfect posture. Calm eyes. He opened doors without speaking much. He drove expensive cars that didn't belong to him. People assumed they knew his entire story just by looking at his uniform. To the wealthy families who hired him, Ethan was invisible. To strangers, he was just another employee trying to survive. But behind those quiet eyes lived a man carrying scars nobody could see. Every morning before sunrise, he stood beside the same vintage watch his late father had given him. He never left home without touching it. It reminded him of one promise. Character is the only thing nobody can steal. Those words had shaped his entire life. Even after losing someone he loved. Even after disappearing from public life. Even after building an empire no one connected to his name. Because Ethan had learned something years ago. Money reveals people. Power exposes them. Respect. That comes only when nobody thinks you deserve it. And that lesson was about to change everything. That morning, Ethan accepted what seemed like another simple driving assignment. A wealthy businessman named Richard Holloway needed a temporary chauffeur for his daughter's engagement party. The pay wasn't important. The location wasn't either. But one small detail caught Ethan's attention. The event was being held at the very mansion his father had helped build 40 years earlier. A place Ethan hadn't visited since childhood. As he drove toward the estate, memories flooded back. His father mixing concrete under the hot sun. His mother bringing lunch in paper bags. Little Ethan running across unfinished floors, dreaming about what the mansion would one day become. Back then, nobody treated the workers like they mattered. That memory stayed with him. Would anything be different today? The mansion sparkled like something from a movie. Crystal fountains. Imported flowers. Luxury cars lined up for blocks. Guests stepped onto a red carpet wearing clothes worth more than most people's homes. Ethan quietly parked near the entrance. Before he could even open the passenger door, a sharp voice echoed behind him. "Hey, driver." He turned. Walking toward him was Vanessa Holloway, 29. Beautiful, confident, always surrounded by cameras and admiration. Millions followed her social media. Fashion magazines called her an icon. People believed she lived a perfect life. But perfection had become her prison. Vanessa had spent years chasing approval. Every compliment felt temporary. Every mistake felt fatal. And today, she wanted everything to look flawless. Unfortunately, Ethan had become the easiest target. She looked him up and down. "You're late." Ethan checked his watch. "I arrived 12 minutes early, ma'am." She rolled her eyes. "Don't argue." Nearby guests laughed softly. Ethan simply nodded. "I'm sorry if there's been a misunderstanding." That answer irritated her even more. She wasn't looking for an apology. She wanted control. But why? Inside the mansion, pressure kept building. Richard Holloway couldn't stop checking his phone. Business deals were collapsing. Investors weren't answering. His company desperately needed one signature from a mysterious investment group. Without it, everything he'd built could disappear within weeks. No one at the party knew. Not even Vanessa. Richard forced a smile while hiding panic behind expensive glasses. Little did he know, the answer to all his problems had already arrived. He was standing outside wearing chauffeur gloves. As guests continued arriving, Ethan noticed an elderly housekeeper struggling with heavy flower boxes. Without saying anything, he walked over. "Let me help." She smiled warmly. "Thank you." Vanessa noticed. Instead of appreciating the gesture, she frowned. The driver should stay where drivers belong. The old housekeeper lowered her eyes. Ethan quietly carried every box anyway. One security guard watched the exchange carefully. His name was Marcus. Unlike everyone else, Marcus recognized Ethan's face from somewhere. He just couldn't remember where. Why did this ordinary chauffeur seem so familiar? The afternoon grew hotter. Workers rushed everywhere preparing for hundreds of guests. Near the entrance, a cleaning cart accidentally tipped over. A bucket filled with dirty mop water splashed across the driveway. Housekeepers scrambled to clean the mess. Vanessa stormed outside. What is wrong with everyone today? Nobody answered. She grabbed the bucket herself. Then she looked directly at Ethan. You. Before anyone could react, she threw the filthy water straight into his face. Silence. Water dripped from Ethan's hair. His white shirt turned gray. The driveway became perfectly still. Everyone waited for him to explode. Instead, he smiled. A small, peaceful, almost heartbreaking smile.
Why?
Marcus stepped forward. Sir, are you okay? Ethan gently stopped him. It's only water. Vanessa laughed. Maybe next time you'll learn your place. Several guests laughed with her. Others looked away in embarrassment. The elderly housekeeper quietly handed Ethan a clean towel. I'm so sorry. Ethan thanked her. No anger. No insults. No revenge. Just kindness. That strange calm unsettled everyone. What was he waiting for? Inside the ballroom, Richard finally received an important phone call. His face lit up. The investors are here? Yes, sir. They're arriving in 5 minutes. Richard sighed with relief. This deal will save everything. He hurried outside personally to welcome them. Luxury SUVs rolled through the front gate. Security opened every entrance. Everyone stood watching. The doors slowly opened. Several executives stepped out. Then, every single one of them walked straight past Richard, past the guests, past Vanessa, and stopped in front of Ethan. One executive smiled. Mr. Brooks. We've been looking everywhere for you. The entire driveway fell silent. Mr. Brooks? Richard blinked. I'm sorry. There must be some mistake. The executive looked confused. No mistake. He turned toward Ethan. The board meeting is waiting whenever you're ready, sir. Vanessa stared in disbelief. Sir? Richard looked back and forth between them. What's happening? The executive answered calmly. Allow me to introduce Ethan Brooks, founder and majority owner of Brooks International Holdings. Richard's knees nearly gave out. That investment group, the one capable of saving his company, belonged to the chauffeur. Nobody spoke. The same guests who laughed minutes earlier suddenly avoided eye contact. Vanessa's face lost all color. The dirty water still dripped from Ethan's sleeves. Yet somehow, he looked taller than everyone around him. Richard rushed forward. I'm deeply sorry. I had no idea. Ethan looked at him quietly. I know. Those 2 words hit harder than shouting ever could. But Ethan still hadn't revealed why he came. And that mystery frightened Richard even more. Inside a private room, Richard begged for another chance. My daughter made a terrible mistake. We can fix this. Ethan remained calm. I'm not here because of your daughter. Richard frowned. Then why are you here? Ethan slowly removed his father's old watch. He placed it on the table. My father helped build this house. He worked 16-hour days. When he became sick, he asked for one thing. Richard swallowed hard. Ethan continued. He wanted the company to pay the wages they still owed him. They refused. Richard closed his eyes. He remembered. A construction worker. Hospital bills. Unpaid overtime. A complaint ignored decades ago. One decision. One forgotten signature. One family left behind. Everything suddenly came rushing back. I was 10 years old, Ethan said softly. I watched my father walk away from this mansion believing hard work didn't matter. He died 3 months later. Richard couldn't speak. Tears filled the old housekeeper's eyes outside the door. She had remembered Ethan all along. She remembered his father too. Ethan looked around the office. I didn't come for revenge. I came to see whether this family had changed, Richard whispered. And have we? Ethan didn't answer. Not yet. Meanwhile, Vanessa overheard everything. Every word. Every memory. Every painful truth. For the first time in years, she saw herself clearly. Not through social media. Not through magazine covers. Not through expensive mirrors. She saw someone who had become exactly the kind of person Ethan's father once suffered under. She quietly walked outside, removed her designer heels, and sat alone on the front steps. She cried where nobody could see. Would Ethan ever forgive her? That evening, hundreds of guests gathered for the engagement speech. Instead, Richard walked onto the stage holding a microphone. His hands shook. I owe everyone the truth. The room fell silent. He publicly confessed the company's past, the unpaid workers, the ignored families, the mistakes hidden for decades. Gasps echoed throughout the ballroom. Then Richard did something nobody expected. He announced a compensation fund for every surviving construction family connected to the original project. Not because lawyers demanded it, because it was finally the right thing to do. Applause slowly filled the room. But everyone waited for Ethan. What would he say? Ethan stepped onto the stage. He looked across the crowd, then toward Vanessa. She stood with tears running down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. I judged you without knowing you. I treated you like you were worth less than me. Ethan smiled gently. My father used to say, you learn more about someone's heart when they meet a stranger than when they meet a king. The ballroom became completely silent. Today, we all learned something, including me. He turned toward Richard. I'll approve the investment. A wave of relief swept through the room. But only if your company signs a permanent employee dignity charter. No worker gets ignored. No family gets forgotten. No person gets judged by a uniform. Richard nodded through tears. You have my word. Months later, the company became known for treating employees better than any competitor. Construction workers received scholarships for their children. Drivers were invited to company celebrations. Housekeepers sat beside executives during award dinners. The elderly housekeeper retired with full honors. Marcus became head of security. Vanessa quietly left the spotlight for a while. She began volunteering with organizations that supported working families. Not for cameras, not for headlines, for herself. As for Ethan, he still drove sometimes. Not because he had to, because every drive reminded him where he came from. Whenever people asked why a billionaire still wore chauffeur gloves, he simply smiled. They remind me never to look down on anyone. Because the richest person in the room isn't always the one wearing the most expensive suit. Sometimes, it's the one carrying the strongest character. And in the end, dirty water washed away more than pride. It revealed truth. It restored a family's honor. It changed generations. And it proved one simple lesson. Never judge someone's value by the job they do today. Because you never know who they're becoming. Or who they've always been.